Hi everybody, Batsiarsi speaking here, and we have the honor and the pleasure to welcome Barundus. I think that's the right pronunciation, right, Barundus?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So on the channel here, along with Refill and Latio, our OH Scout platoons leader. So we have plenty of questions. You guys remember we have this survey and say, hey, we have the chance to have Barundus here and we can ask him questions. So we have this forms post a few weeks ago, and we came up with a bunch of questions here from you guys. Barundus, hi. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure. And I don't know really how much of an honor it is for you to have me on your interview, but I'll take it.
You're kind of making a name here on the DCS community. I mean, you're active on low level flights Discord channel. We're seeing you flying around with Casmo on its YouTube channel also. So everybody's watching that. I mean, we're all watching that, by the way. So. Yes, I mean you're getting famous, man.
Yeah, and I mean I had no idea. So when I started making those, and I've only done the 4 vids about the sort of the cockpit intro to the KW, just to kind of give people a little bit of insight on what they can expect and how it looks, and you know, like I said when we were doing the pre-interview, I don't represent myself as speaking for PC. Myself and some of the other guys that are involved with it as subject matter experts, you know, we have a passion. Some of them are old-time DCS players. I'm not so much, but I'm really getting into it. But through the project, you know, we lend our experience and expertise to get that thing looking right. So I know we weren't going to talk about that as much during this interview, but that's kind of how I got involved with it, and the online presence, which just kind of blew me away that there's so much interest out there. You know, it's kind of neat. I like to see it. It's fun answering questions for people that are truly interested. So I don't think I'll run out of enthusiasm.
I don't think so. And you highlighted something important here, and I need to highlight this also on this recording, that we're not going to talk about Polychop. We're not going to talk about the module, so we have no questions here about the module. We don't have any questions about when it's coming out or anything like this. So I mean, if you guys right now listening and you're expecting anything, new information or scoops about the module, it's not the case. We're really going to talk only about the operations. And I think what's great or having you here, Barundus, is you are a 58. You are a pilot, and you're also flying DCS, and I think that's a double bonus for us, because I mean the pure pilots usually they have no idea of the PC world and the flight simulation limitations, so they can talk about operations, but they cannot really relate to what we can do and what we cannot do about DCS. And now we have the DCS. Purely DCS chair pilots that don't have really any experience on real life, but they have a lot of knowledge what you can do with DCS, and you fit right in the middle. So I think that's awesome. The 58 is going to be really interesting because we started to fly the K50 10 years ago, and obviously unless you were maybe hanging out on the Russian forum, there was no way to have real feedback from K50's pilots. Then the MI8 came out. I don't know anyone flying the MI8 right now. Probably if you were flying a Russian squad, you might have the chance to talk to real MI8 pilots. And then we had the Gazelle, and the Gazelle, suddenly we're starting to have people who actually flew it. And we started to have a little bit of feedback on, hey, I'm flying DCS, but I'm actually an ex or a current Gazelle pilot. But not so much, I guess. And now the 58, I think that's even wider. And I think it's awesome to have actually people who are flying both in DCS and through the aircraft itself. So it's a really interesting moment here for the chopper pilots for DCS.
I would classify myself as heavy on the pilot experience side, but a complete noob on the DCS experience side. So, you know, I don't know how to make things work, and I'm getting into it. Now I've caught the bug, and I'm buying myself all the all the truly expensive equipment that you need to make this thing work. So,
what are you flying, by the way? You have any set of controls already, or?
Yeah, I mean, I had so my history with PC games and stuff goes back, to the 80s. I started in high school with Microsoft, the first Microsoft Flight Simulator. It was 4 colors and wireframes, and it was the Sopwith Camel, and you were flying over just basically a desert of no features. But kind of, I had no idea that DCS has been around so long. So when you say the K50 has been around for 10 years, it kind of blows my mind. I got out of flight simming, I guess, in the late 90s, and really haven't, I played Jane's Longbow 2, and then there was the F-15C, I forget what it was called, and a couple other ones.
Yeah,
Microprose, yeah.
Eagle,
and I was big into those back in the day, but currently, so I've got an Oculus Rift, and I got into Elite Dangerous a little bit, and so I bought. Currently, I'm flying with an X-52, which for the helicopters and DCS is kind of makes it a little bit hard. So I've got some, I guess, higher quality stuff on the way, but it's taken forever to get here. Got myself a set of pedals, which made all the difference in the world. I was trying to use the twist grip, and for testing, that's no good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yes. I mean, it's even more critical for the helicopters, I guess. Low pedals. I don't think we have any guy. I mean, we have some guys here starting to fly with a twist grip, but they just give up, and after a couple of weeks flying with us, they just go and buy their own rudder here. I propose. Sorry, we didn't even start to ask the questions here, but maybe you can share a little bit about yourself. So you say we understand you kind of resume the simulation activity on PC. What about your experience in real life? Can you tell us a little bit what you're doing?
I'm still active duty Army. I'm what's called a warrant officer. So the warrant officers fall somewhere between, and Lateo, it may be a little different from your experience in the UK services, but the warrant officers are what we consider technical and tactical specialists. So we fall somewhere in between the enlisted ranks and the commissioned officer ranks, where the enlisted ranks are, they make everything happen in the services, and the officer ranks are the management aspect and the policy makers and the decision makers. Warrant officers hold a unique in the U.S. Army anyway, a unique role in that we remain with a particular system, be it a weapon system, an intelligence system, a radar system, whatever that piece of warfighting equipment is, the warrant officer tends to remain within that specialty field throughout their entire careers. In the case of aviators, we can come in and spend the first 15 years of our careers in the tactical units and do nothing other than fly. And you branch off into specialty areas such as instruction or standardization, maintenance, safety operations, or the tactical aspect of things where you do a lot of threat analysis, etc. So I'm somewhat on I've capped out in rank on the warrant officer rank. So I've been doing this I came in the Army in 1994, and I enlisted as a Black Hawk crew chief, with the intent of always putting in my packet. So I spent a couple of years as a Black Hawk maintainer and put my warrant officer application packet together, and then was accepted into flight school in late 1996, and graduated flight school in June of 98, and was a Kiowa Warrior pilot from that point forward. So as is typical, did 3 or 4 year assignments at various locations, in Fort Drum, and then I went to Germany, and that's when Iraq and Afghanistan kicked off. So I spent a year of my tour in Germany, unfortunately not in Germany, and that was we got back in 2005, and then from there came to Fort Rucker and did some instructing at the schoolhouse, making new Kiowa Warrior pilots. And then from there, just kind of got to more senior and senior positions. So as I think everybody knows, that the Kiowa Warrior's gone out of the inventory now, at least in the U.S. Army, and they're being purchased or granted to other nations that have interest in picking them up. So I know Tunisia got a few, and Croatia is going to be flying a few, and I think Greece is coming online with theirs now. But to roll all that up, I ended my career in the acquisition side of things. So I was in the project that was supposed to be the successor to the 58D, which was the 58F, which is called the CASUP, or the Cockpit and Sensor Upgrade Program. And I was in that program office when the end happened. So from there, I sort of specialized. The end, meaning when the Kiowa Warrior was brought out of inventory in the U.S. Army. So the 58F project was ultimately canceled before it was introduced into the mainstream of Army forces. So those airframes were never deployed. They were just in prototype stage. And from there, I finished my career kind of in acquisitions, dealing with requirements for new weapon systems, etc. And currently, I'm back at Fort Rucker as in a kind of a mentorship role for the flight school students here. My total experience is about 5,200 hours flying OH-58 Alpha Charlies in the schoolhouse, and then I flew, 5,000 of those hours are in the 58D, and then most recently, after the divestment of the 58, I transitioned to Apaches. But being so late in my career, I never really went to fly those operationally. So I'm Apache qualified, but I wouldn't call myself really an Apache warfighter pilot. So that's a lot of words to to sum it up in a nutshell.
Oh, that's great. I mean, that sounds great. How did you get involved with Polychop? I mean, if you can share, I don't know.
Yeah,
heard about it, so you knew someone.
Well, it was on Facebook, and there's a couple Facebook, I don't know what you call it, forums, or the groups, I guess. And Sven had posted some initial texture concepts and wireframe models for, and this was, I don't know, 2.5, 3 years ago now, on the page. And, that kind of piqued my interest. So I DM'd him and said, hey, if you need any help with anything, let me know. And then it kind of just evolved into what it is currently, where I'm helping out with technical expertise on getting the systems right in their project. So there's a couple other guys. I came in relatively late to the project. There's a younger man who is currently, well, I guess he's just now getting back from deployment to Afghanistan. He's still in quarantine. That kind of got the project, as far as the SMEs, off the ground with Polychop, who did the initial work, and I kind of picked it up as he was deployed. So I think he'll be back on the team here in the next couple weeks, and as Polychop looks to finalize their project here in the next, I don't know if I should say, it's going to be several months at least.
Yeah, okay, yes. Yeah, we said we're not going to talk about this, so.
Yeah.
All right. But
that's how I got involved with it, yeah.
Well, we know, Sven say it's this year, so I think that's what we can say.
Right.
It's this year.
That's what their target is, yeah.
All right. Okay, so let's thank you for the intro. We coming back to the list of questions here we had for you, and it's purely operational here. I mean, operational and DCS related, obviously. The first question was about the different missions. So we are not quite sure how we're going to use we're not completely sure how we're going to fully use the Kiowa. So it's not clear to all of us how the Kiowa is used in relation to attack helicopter, or either is it in relation with attack helicopter or ground support or anything else. So can you maybe talk a little bit about the different mission that the Kiowa was assigned to?
Absolutely. And just as a plug for my buddy Casmo, so I'll amplify on some of the things we talked about in that first video that he and I did, talking about the history of the KW. So if any of your listeners are interested in maybe hearing some other aspects of how the KW came to be, by all means check out that video that he did, because we kind of delved into going all the way back to OH operations back in Vietnam and the Alpha Charlie, etc., and how that mission evolved. But So this is where we get into the kind of the sticky piece of coin or counterinsurgency operations on a static battlefield versus large-scale combat operations. Which, when I learn about DCS, it seems it's more geared towards the mechanized fight. So I'll talk about both, and you tell me which one you want me to focus on. I think what people think the KW does is mostly the coin fight, where you have a team of two, maybe a low bird and a high bird. The high bird being trail, always following the lead bird around, who's kind of snooping and pooping low down in the reeds and the grass and looking for, sign is what we call it, which really kind of goes back to the Vietnam days, versus the doctrinal. The doctrinal mission of the Kiowa warrior is as part of the cavalry. So, and Lateo, I'm sure you can expound on this as well, but that's really, so the cavalry is, in a nutshell, it's the eyes and ears of the commander. It's a self-contained, in the U.S. Army, it has its own fires, has its own logistics support, has in many cases, its own air, in that the Kiowa warrior troops in the old days were integrated into a squadron that also had tanks and Bradleys, and it operates independently from the main body. So if you think back to Desert One, and there's something called the Battle of 73 Easting. That's a classic cavalry fight where a lone cavalry troop was operating ahead of the main body, and the idea is to always find the enemy, particularly their reconnaissance assets, first, and either cause them to make decisions that they're not ready to make, which throws off their plan, or to conduct a counter-reconnaissance fight, which means attrit their, basically blind them so that their own commander can't make decisive actions. And then secondarily, we also do what's called a security mission, which is, again, operating independently from the main body, providing reaction time and maneuver space to the unit that we support. Now, I'm talking about the doctrinal mission, which we haven't done in a few years now, but is becoming more prevalent again. So the mission of the Kiowa is always to be out front, attempting to locate enemy forces before they can influence our own main body. We do that with the sight, obviously, which is on top of the rotor head. It was designed for a Cold War sort of folded gap scenario where we can hide behind masking terrain and then, just expose the optics in the sight. And it has a laser rangefinder. It has a very accurate navigation system where we could laze and determine the location of the targets. And then really what we do is pass information. We're armed in order for self-defense, but also to attrit the enemy's reconnaissance forces. So in the Russian model, they would always have the advance guard's main body, and then they have recon elements in front of that. And we would basically try to find them before they find us. So that's why we have Hellfire, to kill their BTRs, BRDMs, etc. And so that's the doctrinal mission of Kiowa. So I just talked for about 5 minutes. What would you like me to kind of continue on in that vein, or talk about some coin operations and how that's different?
That's terrible, because I was listening to you and I have so many questions popping up that are not on what we wanted to ask you, and I hope it's not going to extend too much. I hope you guys don't mind. Like a side question, but it's related really to that. You mentioned about the Cold War times and the site being used to stay hidden behind the trees and stuff. So in DCS, you saw we have Caucasus, we have the channel map and the Normandy map that we can use for that. Now, most of the missions actually are taking place, a lot of our missions are taking place over Persian Gulf. And now you saw there's Syria coming up for DCS. Is it something that changes the way you fly the Kiowa between, the Kiowa, as you say, was made for Cold War, a specific type of landscape. Now you guys you were flying over desertic areas. Did it change anything on the way and the missions?
Yes, absolutely. So when you think about the mechanized battlefield, it has a lot of things that can kill you on it, right? Air defense systems. So from the guy with an AK all the way up to SA-8s, now SA-19s, etc., with man pads being in between. So tactics there are to fly at nap of the earth altitudes, which is 40 feet or below, or 0 to 25 feet or below the obstacles, basically, and you use cover and concealment for survivability, versus in the coin fight, where you have a permissive air environment, meaning there's really no air threats. We flew higher. Now, our sight and the systems in the Kiowa Warrior are not designed for a dynamic sort of flight regime. So the way the thumb force controller on the Copilot cyclic is designed, and the way the gyros and the placement itself above the rotor head of the sight, it's really not conducive to flying around at high speed, constantly looking in different directions. So we ended up not really using the sight in the way it was intended when it was designed to hide in a hover hole and find tanks from 5 or 8 kilometers away. So the systems in the Kiowa Warrior honestly aren't really that good for how we employed it over the last 15 years. So that's where in DCS, one of the things I'm interested in is how well can the enemy see you? Like, can you mask? Do trees hide you from the enemy? What's the radar detection range? Because all those things in real life, I don't know, do they work in DCS? Because that's how you would fly it, low and slow, sneak up, and then find out where the enemy is, and then you could employ attack helicopters to kill them with, they carry 16 Hellfires, etc. So that's, yeah. I'm kind of curious on how DCS works as far as the threat AI.
So it works. I mean, okay. To answer you, that you can hide behind trees. It's actually hiding you from the enemy line of sight most of the time. I say most of the time with the trees, and the buildings also can be used. So they won't see you. They would, and even if they see you for a short moment, if they engage you, you can still come back in behind the trees and behind the buildings and hide, and they will lose the lock on you. Okay. So yeah, that is working. It's recent. I would say it's maybe a year and a half or 2 years old, but now it's working. You can actually hide behind trees.
Okay, and that's exactly how you should fly it then. So if you design your missions in a permissive air environment versus a non-permissive environment, meaning you have to stay low to survive, then that's how you would employ it in real life. Yeah.
All right. I already used 23 minutes of the time. Sorry for Latio and refill. Maybe we should move to question 2. We actually have question about mission design also anyway. So we'll come back about to that anyway. Latio, you had a question maybe, no?
I do. I feel it's probably been answered already, to be quite honest. I'll run through the question anyway, just to make sure we've not missed anything. Effectively, this is what we've been talking. During the Cold War, the UK military had British Gazelles, and they were assigned to being a left-hand seat operator myself. We'd fly very low, find, fix an enemy, potentially destroy it with joint fires, but we could also hand the targets over to our links armed with tow, and then we'd disappear off to the flanks. How, in your opinion, do these tactics differ from your experiences in the Kiowa? And I'm probably looking at the sort of the desert experiences, for example, Iraq and Afghanistan, than sort of the temperate West Germany Fulda Gap sort of scenario.
So let me just say, when I enlisted back in the day, I wanted to be an Aero Scout observer too. That's what I enlisted to do, but they got rid of the MOS like 2 months before, so the occupational specialty. So when I enlisted, instead of being a wrench turner, I wanted to be that left seat observer as a pathway into being a pilot too, but I didn't get that opportunity, so pretty cool.
We did the same. That's exactly what happened to us as well. They obviously shit canned the observer role, and they demanded it must be two pilots to fly the to the AH-1. So
I think it's just as the systems evolved, and now we have the capability to laze and target store. The expertise of that left-hand observer maybe wasn't as necessary as it was back in the day.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah,
and
but
also as well.
Oh, go.
I think the UK military were not training pilots; they wanted to train mission commanders. So that left seat then became the senior individual, and usually with the UK military, we have the warrant officer, but we'll also take junior NCOs as well to fly aircraft as well. So you can go start as an OF3, OF2, sorry, even to get on the pilot program.
Okay. Yeah, so we get into a lot of the culture aspects. Not to derail this question, but our air mission commanders, whenever you have more than one aircraft, you have to have somebody that's in charge of all the aircraft. Usually would sit in the left seat as well. Yeah, kind of similar. But to get back into your tactics question, so the concept of what we would term a pink team, or a team of mixed aircraft, whereas you have an observer aircraft and an attack aircraft operating together, was never really a thing. You go all the way back to Vietnam, yes, they did. They operated that way normally, but in the modern doctrine, it was not ever envisioned that way. So the Kiowa would never, by the book, have flown as an observer with a attack aircraft, kind of in tow behind it. But what you're describing would happen as a means of expediency. So, particularly in the coin fighter, what we've been doing the last 15 years, we would either get a heavy team where you have, we call it a three-legged dog or a heavy team, but you have two Kiowa warriors and then an Apache as a third component of that team. The two Kiowa warriors would operate as a lead and trail, and then the Apache would just kind of hang back and be big daddy and oversight in case they got themselves in trouble, which is a pretty cool concept. But that's a lot of resources to give to one mission for one day, and if you have to do it in perpetuity, it's hard to keep all those aircraft flying, maintenance-wise. But the original concept of the Kiowa was as an artillery observer, so we'd use the target rangefinder, and this was in the unarmed days before it became, so it was the Kiowa OH-58D before it became the Warrior. It worked primarily for the artillery, spotting targets, and it was later on in the 80s that there was a requirement for a small armed helicopter to operate off of ships in the Persian Gulf, and that's how we got weaponized. But to your question on like the Gazelles, being truly unarmed and unafraid out there in front of everybody else, we didn't operate that as a team, as a habitual concept. It became an expedient later on.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's all been answered. But I can't go on to the next question where you're talking about how they operate. A typical sortie, was it, how many units went out? Would you work in pairs of two, or would you go with four? Would you ever operate Kiowa sortie in an odd number of choppers?
So again, splitting it between the coin environment and the doctrinal large-scale combat operations environment. So in coin, you always operate in teams of two. So a lead and a trail, and that's really kind of the culture that developed, because you're mutually supporting, and the way we operated was always a lead and a trail, and typically a low and a high. Sometimes we were high, sometimes we were low, just depends on the situation. But in the coin environment, whether you're Blackhawks, Apaches, etc., it was always two. But then when you flip that towards building a scenario for, let's say, a mechanized fight where you're looking for targets for fast movers, etc. We would call that. So that's a typical cavalry mission, either a security mission or a reconnaissance mission, where you're doing a movement to contact, and you might launch 4 ships, which would be a platoon, or 8, which would be the entire troop, and then 3 troops to a squadron. So it just depends on who you're working for. But if you're doing a reconnaissance mission, you would absolutely launch, let's say, 4 ships or the whole platoon's worth on a night's worth of missions, and then hand that mission off to the next platoon on the next duty cycle, or even the next troop, depending on the mission. So scenarios where Kiowa will shine is, I believe, it's going to make you money, because if we get the target location aspect right in the game, and being able to hand those targets off to whomever you want to, will be pretty cool. As I understand it, that's not really a thing right now in DCS.
So
is that true?
Well, in DCS, no, but there's tons of way to do that, and we are using scripts, actually artillery scripts, where you can send the position you get from, in that case, Gazelle can give you the position of a target, and you can send this position through text, or using the F10 map to an artillery group that will engage an artillery group, or a ship that will engage the target at the coordinates you just sent. So it's not implemented in DCS basic, but in missions it's not too difficult, and we're doing that right now to add scripts that will allow you to do that, and it's working quite well.
So I think it hinges on what kind of mission you want to build. Do you want to build a counterinsurgency type mission where you go out and do convoy security, or route reconnaissance for a resupply convoy that's moving from FOB A to FOB B? Typically there you would operate as a 2-ship, and that went on. So that's pretty much a 24-hour presence. That's why you can't ever surge in the counterinsurgency, because you could think of it almost like being a policeman patrolling a neighborhood. So you go on shift, you fly around, look for stuff, wait for something to happen, and then 8 hours later you go off shift and you launch the next 2 to take up that time block. Versus if you're building a mission for a deliberate attack, or you're doing an attack on a zone or an area, you would launch 4 or 8 and mass fires, and you do the mission and then you come back. It's not so much being in the air waiting for something to happen. This is our mission. You brief it while you plan it, brief it, execute, come back and debrief. So that may kind of lead into your next question about timing, like how long would you stay in the air? And the counterinsurgency fight is just, you pretty much maintain an aerial presence 24 hours a day for the entire period you're there. And I liken it to being like a policeman in a neighborhood.
Okay.
It's less of a deliberate task than it is you're flying around looking for stuff and waiting for stuff to happen.
Okay, so that's what you're doing in real life and what you can do in DCS, as you say, and we kind of grouping the questions here, but that's good, because it's going to be more efficient, and we kind of address a little bit those questions. And one of the questions was about, I think we so far we're using the OH or the Scout or the Gazelle, following the doctrine, not really the other cases you mentioned. So and it's not always working very well. So the only attack helicopter we can work with so far in DCS, is the K-50. So in the missions we're coming up with usually are, okay, we're launching the Gazelle, trying to pinpoint targets for the K-50 to engage. Now, in some cases, depending on the timing we're setting up on the mission, because the K-50 is flying like 50 to 60 knots faster than the Gazelle, they're often ending up on the EA on targets before the Gazelle do, and they're kind of waiting for us, although they can see the target sometime based on what they have on board, for us to say, okay, you have to attack this, you have to attack that. But they kind of say, okay, we could have done that before. So I don't think we're doing the mission the right way in this case. And as you say, maybe working with attack helicopter is not the right thing to do, or it's not the realistic thing to do with the Kiowa. Now, if you're asking about what type of mission we'd like to do any missions that can be actually flown on DCS. So we are doing escorts. We are doing escorts, even ground escorts from convoys or air escorts. Like we're having maybe a flight of MI8s and Hueys having to go from point A to point B, and having some. Well, not Kiowas yet, but at least we have Gazelle ahead of them and clearing up the way.
Yeah.
But based on what you know about DCS and your experience, missions design is critical for a squad. Like if you don't have mission designer, if you don't have missions, then you don't have no squad. It's not enough to have pilots in the squad. You need to have missions. So any
focus.
Yeah. So any idea, any good story you can come up with, say, hey, we have the Kiowa now. What could we do? What kind of story we could tell with the Kiowa in DCS as a mission? What would you think about?
I think where the Kiowa will shine over the Gazelle is its laser and the ability to locate targets. And then if and when we implement the digital messaging and being able to pass those targets rapidly through in-game systems rather than workarounds like it sounds like we're doing with combined arms, etc., I think that'll be super fun. So you describe like the issue of the KAs flying faster than the Gazelles. Like that is absolutely a thing, and you will be sorely disappointed in how fast the KW flies. Like the Gazelle is a racehorse. The Kiowa, everybody had to slow down to fly as fast as we did.
You're talking about 90 knots, right, for the cruise?
How fast?
90? 90?
Yeah. 90 is a comfortable number, which is not very fast. So that's why, like if you have escort missions and stuff, the Blackhawks would either launch way after us if we were to escort them or meet them somewhere, or they would have to, basically if we're escorting them because they required an armed aerial escort, they would have to slow down 40 knots slower than they would prefer to fly. So they were always kind of irritated in that aspect. So that's where we have trouble with the Apaches too, because they can fly at 120, 130 knots, no problem. The Kiowa is flying around at 90 typically, and that would equate to about. And so you can fly a little bit faster. Cruise is about 75% torque on a typical mission-loaded aircraft, and that would get you about 90 knots. To go from 75 to 95% torque would get you another maybe 10 knots. But your fuel flow just really went through the roof. So, and that's because of all the drag. The faster you go, the more drag affects you. So pulling in all that more power, that 20% difference only got you 5, 8, maybe 10 knots of maximum airspeed, and then it just won't go any faster. So we typically flew around at around 75% torque, and that landed somewhere around 90 to 95 knots or so. And that was just the reality. So getting back to your question about the problem of like the KAs getting to the target area before the Gazelles, let me ask you this. Do the threat systems in DCS, is it easier for them to see a KA versus a Gazelle due to signature?
So that depends. The K doesn't have any thermal imager or anything, so it needs to have some good lighting. So if you're flying at night, like really dark night, pitch black, or if you're flying in the early mornings with the sun, sun in your sensors in your eyes, then they won't see much compared to the Gazelle we can see in IR.
But how for threat detection, in other words, the enemy being able to see you, is the Gazelle in game truly harder to find than the KA?
It's not necessarily any harder to find, but it has an RW and a K50 doesn't. So you do get warning when there's a radar trying to, search radar goes up, where the KW or the KA does not.
So in terms of, and that threat detection system is key, right? So the KW is going to have CMOS, which is really self-defense, but the APR-39, the RWR, can help you locate. So when you're building a mission, the most, in terms of priority, as far as what you need to kill, the Gazelles with their HOTS would be able to identify if the systems are emitting those SA9s, SA13s, etc. that are out there. That's your number one priority, so that you can then allow your follow-on heavy attack forces to come in and kill the tank formation or whatever it is. So the Gazelles or the KWs would be tasked with finding those what are called high priority targets.
We saw this. We did a mission just recently where the K-50s were tasked to go and find the SA2, a Hansong SA2 high altitude SAM system, and they really struggled because one, they didn't have the RWR, but also K-50s don't get low enough as to what we do. In the end, the K-50s came back limping, and we had to go in and deal with the SA2s. And we were literally pushing the grass. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and that SA2 can engage a helicopter, so you're relatively safe in that regard. But you're never going to find an SA2 without some other closer in ADA systems protecting those. So
there was also a box of Shilkas around there as well, and that's what dealt with the K-50s. And the thing is, we pick up the ZU-23-4s on the RWR, so we roughly worked out where they were, and then just were right on the peripheral of their sort of limit of exploitation of their range, and we were able to then, let's say, punch some HOTS in there.
Yeah. And with the HOT, you got to get into about, 4,500 meters, which is
4.3 Ks,
yeah. So that's the other aspect. If you go out, so in the mission you build, if you're going against a high threat environment target set, like surface-to-air missiles, you could potentially, send a team of 2 or 4 out there with a couple birds. I mean, weight-wise, 4 Hellfires is pretty much untenable, but in game you could certainly do it. And take out, so you would open that corridor for the follow-on heavy attack aircraft. Your mission would not be to kill the tanks. That's for you to, number one, find them, but the OH role in that is to take out the high priority targets that enables the follow-on forces to do their job afterwards.
Yeah, dislocate is sent, find, fix, and destroy, whether or not through joint fires or we sort of do a BOH in the air.
I always preach, I'd rather use somebody else's bullets than my own, because I only have 1 or 2, and artillery, I really wish we could in cockpit format, I don't know much about combined arms, but I think a call for fire is not really how it works. But if you could dynamically format a call for fire and then send those requests and have it work, that would be really fun, really cool.
The UK military, that's what they really drill when they do the OAT at the end of their pilot's course is literally calling for fire and obviously doing the bracket adjustments.
Yeah. So I tell you what I'm going to be doing is back to the pre-2001 Cold War fight. I'm going to be snooping and pooping and using my laser and my Hellfires to try and find the advanced reconnaissance forces and the high priority targets so that we can enable the heavy hitters to come in afterwards and kill all the tanks.
Yeah, that's what the Hell Arm missions we used to do in the Cold War. The Lynxes would take out the ZU-23-4s, the C2 element, some of the Vanguard as well, and then obviously let the fast air come in and deal with everything else, the MBTs.
So the APR-39 will definitely be an enabler in that regard. If it works good in game, I don't know whether it does.
So that's your RWR suite, is it?
It's an APR-39, and then it has a laser detector as well, the AN AVR-2, and that's the radar side of it and the laser side of it. And then the CMOS is a newer system that detects manpad launches and can launch flares and countermeasures against manpads.
Ooh.
But that's only after it's been launched, so you don't know it's there until it launches, and then it can deploy countermeasures. Because there's no way to see a heat seeker before it's passive. So yeah.
That's a pretty good capability. That, I mean, at the moment, like you say, an SA-18 is when it's going up your tailpipe. So
yeah, provided it works.
Exactly.
I'll tell you. So, real life story. I don't know if I should. Yeah, I probably can't talk about it on how well it worked in real life. Yeah.
I hate it.
That's a real tease, man. That's terrible.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You can edit that out.
That's right.
Okay, shall we move to the next question?
So yeah,
Try to work out where we are.
Where we are first. I think we talked about a little bit of the missions we can do and how we can use a Kiowa. The length of the mission.
7,
so obviously not really 8 hours. We're not going to do 8 hours. Size of aircraft also 7. Something we haven't talked about.
Yeah, 7.
Yeah, go ahead. Latio.
Okay, so in DCS, fixed wing aircraft, you're providing cars. What's the best fixed wing to operate with the Kiowa?
So
bring those 9-liners in.
A10 always, but we worked with anybody. So in the coin environment, again, like they fly around and basically you're just on a mission line and you don't necessarily have a deliberate task when you launch. So they're kind of just up there waiting for something to happen too. So we would look on the air tasking order and see who's available during our mission window and if CAS was required, or in a lot of cases the CAS was brought in by the ground force. And then you would have a stack of rotary wing from low altitude, and then at high altitude you may have some fixed wing operating above as well. But anything that has spot tracker capability, so the sniper pod on the A10 or the F-16, I believe the A-10s have it as well. I'm not sure about in game. So Kiowa unfortunately doesn't have a spot tracker capability, but other systems could see our spot. So that'd be a good way to orient them on targets, or to bring them into the visual area. But A10s, they're beasts. Love working with those guys, and they're really air to ground focused. In some ways, the F-16s as well, but anything else is just as viable. But yeah, you always go to A10s. I mean, they carry a ton of stuff, and they have the right systems and the right radios to talk to you.
That's something we kind of running into. We're not flying fixed wing at all in the squad. Like it's purely rotaries, but we are regularly flying with other squads. So either we inviting them or they're inviting us, and they have squads like fixed wing squads. It's really challenging to design a mission that works for both fixed wing and rotary wings, because it sounds all the time like a different world. It is a different world in a way. So we are seeing those fixed wing guys on the ground taxiing up to the runway, and that's the last time we're going to see them. Like we're going to hear about them a little bit. We're going to see some bomb dropping sometimes, but that's all. And it's really, really hard. First to have, because the speeds are so different, the altitudes are different, the weapons are different, the way they're using that. It's really, really hard to build a nice mission that works on both sides. It takes a lot of work. And we're never sure how and what to use and what type of aircraft we should ask to work with.
So I think, number one, you always have to have a common air net. Is that something you would, either through DCS but you got to have a way. So Lateo, you may be able to expound on this, offline or after the interview, but yeah, when you're talking about joint operations and between service operations, it gets really, really complex, the planning aspect of it, for exactly the reasons that you just talked about. The timing, and fixed wing doesn't necessarily have as much time on station, so you have to work out all those pieces and coordinate with communication from top-level Army headquarters to top-level Air Force headquarters, and then that has to get passed down to the executing units. And it's not easy to plan joint operations. When you talk about being on station at the same time, that's more like what I was describing in the coin environment, where you have Air Force missions and Army missions. They happen to be operating over the same piece of ground, and if something happened, you would the ground owner, the ground force commander, could request assistance from the Army helos or CAS, and there's quite a bit of difference between how the Army helos operate versus what close air support is in the Navy and the Air Force. There's a lot of coordination aspects involved. Maybe we don't get into it today, but for your gaming purposes, I think it would revolve around time. Like the helicopters launch and do something in the mission area, identify targets or take out surface-to-air missile threats, etc., which enables the follow-on forces to flow in and operate as they would like to afterwards. Yeah.
A little follow-up question along these lines. Fixed-wing fast movers work closely with an AWACS. Do the chopper units you worked with, would they integrate with an AWACS so that an AWACS could say, okay, we got this over here, much like what that A-10 did on the mission we flew there last week, but from an AWACS perspective, or does they not have the capability of talking to an AWACS?
Okay. So AWACS, we'll talk about the acronym Airborne. What is it? Airborne Warning and Control. So AWACS for fast movers is only good for air threats. As far as I know, that radar system cannot see anything on the ground. But there's a different. So taking that concept though, there's a different system that does. It's called JSTARS, Joint Surveillance Targeting and Ranging.
Acquisition, reconnaissance system. Yeah, we have those. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a Boeing 737, and it's got this GWIS radar on it. But instead of it being a dome on top that rotates and looks for air threats, what this thing does, it's called a side-looking synthetic aperture radar, and it is designed to look at targets on the ground. And specifically, what it does is it looks for moving targets. So it was designed to find Doppler effects on radar on the ground. It's not so good against, like, if you have a tank that doesn't move over a 1 hour period, it may or may not see it. But it would see a tank that repositioned from point A to point B because it would see the Doppler effect and it would take a track. So it's been repurposed into what you describe in the coin fight, where they, again, I can't get into some of the, less talk aboutable aspects of it, but they can see in some cases like footprints where there weren't footprints before due to the radar, the fidelity of the radar that they have. So if JSTARS is on station, and it may or may not be, you could leverage that. So number one, you could talk to them, absolutely. They have all the radios, UHF, VHF, whatever the case may be, Fox mic encryption, all that stuff. You just have to know what frequencies you need to call them on, and then if they're available, you can have them get you the information that they have. They probably already have a tasking that's not related to your own tasking, and to get an asset like a JSTARS retasked is not like, they operate at the theater level, right? Whereas helicopters operate, maybe in a 50-mile circle. So
the strategic capability as well, isn't it? Is JSTARS?
Yes. But what you're describing is available and it is used, but probably not typically. So when you get into the SOCOM realm, those guys have every asset available to them whenever they want it. So they will have stacks. When you're talking about things like the Green Berets or any sort of special operations, warfare missions, they will have, as air support, we call it the stack. So you start with 160 as special operations helicopters available, and that would be at the bottom of the stack, right? Then you got UAVs that may be at 5,000 to 10,000 feet or whatever the case may be. Then they got fixed wing CAS on station. They also have Spooky in some cases, and then they'll also have like Bone B1s or JSTARS, or basically it depends on the importance of the mission. But the assets available to special operations are well above and beyond what a typical main forces unit would have on a daily basis. But if they're out there, you can leverage them. and it really comes down to the knowledge and the skill of the air mission commander and the pilot to do his due diligence and looking at the air tasking order before they go out on their mission and seeing what assets are available, what frequencies are they going to be on, what are their call signs. It's about research too. So if you're good, you know those things are out there, and if you're creative, you can leverage them. A lot of guys used it, a lot of guys don't. But it's not typical.
Okay, we kind of, in a large missions, like say, we kind of doing this in a way that on every mission we have a comp plan. So on large mission, when we have more than 10 people flying, sometimes it comes up to 20, and you have to have some kind of coordination here. We have I don't know if the correct term, we have an AMC, but we have some guy who's usually not flying. Usually. Yeah, they're not flying. There's usually the guy who actually designed the mission. Very often he's doing that. He's not flying the mission, but he's having this global picture. We're using LOTAC. I don't know if you heard about this software. No, so LOTAC basically it's a AWACS kind of AWACS type system for DCS. It's not sold by ED, but it's quite a realistic represeration of what an AWACS operator would see. It connects to the server and it displays all the air traffic. But depending on the level of realism you set it up, you can actually see also some of the ground targets, and you can connect and you can talk on the radio over a simple radio to all the different assets and hear all of them. And direct a little bit the way the mission is going through this theater side view, if you want.
Yeah. Okay. So that would almost be, so you have this common operating picture that sounds to me more like something what you would have at your headquarters, maybe not in the cockpit. Right.
Yeah. It's not in. Yeah. As I say, the guy is not flying. He's not in a helicopter. He's in a separate program, and he's got the entire view of the operations. He can see where the helicopter are, where the aircraft are, and eventually some of the threats and the ships and some of the ground targets can be seen sometimes. And he can direct and he can contact those guys and direct a little bit the way the mission is going.
Yeah, that is something that we would call that the common operating picture, and there's various systems that would do that, but that is something that any TOC, any tactical operations center would have available. And then the air mission commander is always on site as some part of the mission in the air, but you also have your S3 who is coordinating the battle from the command post, so to speak. And so he would have that whole God's eye view picture of where all the moving pieces are and feed that information to the executors that are out in the mission area.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Let's move on. It's almost an hour now. I'm going to take the next.
By the way, I mean, I'm having a good time. So if you need to limit the time, that's fine. But
no, I don't need. I
don't worry about me.
I think we can all spend the entire day talking about this. I have so many questions. But
could do. I've got a hard stop though, 1800 Alpha. If you want me on a meeting at 2000 Alpha tonight.
All right. Oh, that's true. But I mean, we're fine. We're more than halfway anyway, and we can go to some of the question. I'm thinking about question 8 and 9 about the weapons. We talked about it's the question 8 and 9 is going a little bit together. I mean, we can see people using the Kiowa as a gunship. Because it's got Hellfires. I mean, we can see that as they're loading up the Hellfires and going on a hunt to tanks. I'm not sure from what we discussed so far, this is exactly what we should do. But typically, coming back to the first questions, what are the weapon loadout? What is the loadout per? We talked about this little bit different types of mission. What would you bring with you in your Kiowa for each type of mission we talked about?
I'll talk about two pieces of it, the performance aspect and then the mission aspect. So to get to the first part of your question, it depends on the mission. So if we are doing coin, it's going to be some flavor of probably 50 caliber and rockets. And it depends on the AMC of that team. If he wants, some guys like to take a Hellfire along because when 50 cal and rockets are heavily dependent on the skill of the pilot themselves. So, because we don't have any systems for aiming, etc., you don't always get a guaranteed kill when you're shooting with 50 caliber rockets. You pretty much have a guaranteed kill with that silver bullet Hellfire. So some AMCs like to have a Hellfire bird always in the team. Typically, we would put him in trail. And it varies unit to unit. So there is no one right way to do it. It's whatever you think when you do your mission analysis, or just what you prefer that you would like to have as a team loadout. If you get into your mechanized fight where you're doing counter reconnaissance or taking out those high priority targets, then clearly Hellfire is the weapon of choice. That thing doesn't miss, and it'll kill just about anything it hits, up to certain more modern systems. But certainly it'll take out any ADA systems because they're not as armored as tanks. And you can shoot 7Ks is probably typical. So when you are describing a standard loadout, now I'll get into the performance piece of it. Kiowa Warriors are always weight limited. So 5,200 pounds was our maximum gross weight per the book. 5,500 pounds is doable, but you really start to get into aspects of, if you lose an engine and you try to auto-rotate, basically it's not gonna. It's so heavy that it's going to come out of the sky and not be recoverable. So there's some structural issues there. So we were always trading or making a decision to trade time on station or fuel versus how many rockets and bullets we wanted to have. So as a planning figure, we would kind of look at having about an hour and a half worth of fuel, and then we would fill the rest up with whatever weight we could take in bullets and rockets. If you knew you were going to do some shooting, for instance, if you were already in a fight and you were just having to do rotations through the FARP, and you knew you were going to go out, shoot your load, come back and rearm, well, then by all means take 500 rounds and 7 rockets, which is your full loadout for the gun rocket, and just take whatever fuel, like 300-400 pounds, which would equate to about an hour's worth of fuel, and then come back and load out again. But if you're going out for the presence, like if you need to fill up your whole 8-hour mission block, and that's not a thing in DCS, but where we would patrol in our mission area for 8 hours, we would look at taking 300. So my preferred loadout was always a gunbird and a rocket for the coin fight. So I would take 300 rounds of 50 cal and 7 rockets, and I'd like a mix of white phosphorus, 1 or 2 marking rounds, 1 or 2 HE rounds, and some flechettes. And then I'd look at the weight, and then I'd fill the rest up with gas. You could get right around an hour and a half worth of gas with a 20-minute reserve before you need to go think about doing a FARP or a fuel turn. Yeah, and then so the second part was stingers.
Yes.
Well, let me talk about Hellfires first. So
Yes,
each Hellfire weighs about 100 pounds. So 100 pounds equates to 300 rounds of 50 cal. So when you're talking about trade-offs, we burn about 300 pounds an hour. So if you're talking about, I want to carry 100 rounds more of 50 cal, that means I got to give up 20 minutes of gas in many cases. So that's where you got to do your analysis. Like, do I care about being able to hang out for an hour and a half, or do I care about having as much ammo available as I can? So it's always that trade-off. So 100 rounds of 50 cal is 20 minutes of gas. Each rocket weighs about 24 pounds, so that's where you do that trade-off. Each missile is 100 pounds, plus the launcher is another 120 pounds. So you get heavy pretty quick. That's why you typically didn't see us flying around with 2 Hellfires, because that one Hellfire just took away 20 minutes of gas. But if you knew you were going to go shoot them, you don't get the fuel. You put your 2 Hellfires on, you go out and shoot them, and then come back. So for a deliberate mission, like you're going to do a counter reconnaissance fight, and you can sequence your teams to say you plan for an hour of looking, and then your follow-on team comes on, you do a quick battle handover, and your team number 1 cycles back to the FARP. take whatever ammo you like. If you think you're going to be in contact, take the ammo. If you think you're going to have to be out there longer, you have to make that trade-off. In game, I see, nobody's going to want to fly around for 2 hours without seeing anything. So you would build your missions. You go to the mission area, you find some targets, you shoot them. So you could have typically a lot more gas and or ammo than we would take off with in real life. Stingers. But let me stop there before I get into stingers. Does that answer your question?
It's awesome. It's more than answered my question. Yeah. Are you guys happy? Let you and Phil with that?
That's good by me.
Yeah, that was a very detailed response. I hope that. No, that's great. I'm scribbling a few notes down at the moment because obviously I like to take lots of notes, and this is absolutely golden what I'm hearing at the moment. So it's going to be really helpful.
Cool, yeah. Really cool.
So a coin fight, just to boil it down into real simple numbers, I'd take 650 pounds of gas, 300 rounds of 50 cal, and 5 to 7 rockets. Each bird could vary in weight by 150 pounds for whatever reason. I don't know why. They got sand in them, but the empty weight of each aircraft could vary by quite a lot. So you never really knew. That's why you had to look at the paperwork for each aircraft, and also we had to weigh ourselves. So when I walked into my pilot's CP, each of the guys, we have a chart, and everybody weighed themselves with all the crap they took out to the aircraft. So whereas I weigh about 180 just naked, call it 188 with my uniform on, I weigh about 240 with the stuff that I put in the aircraft. My personal weapons, my helmet, my goggles, my radio, my 7 magazines of 5.56 and my 4 magazines of 9mm, all that stuff, I ended up weighing about 240 pounds. I'm a kind of a small guy, so some of my brothers are a little beefier than I am, so they could push 300 pounds. So again, that's that's 15 to 20 minutes of fuel that you can't take because the guy sitting next to you weighs 100 pounds more than you do. But I would always look at being about 600 pounds of gas, which equates to an hour and a half of flying time with a 20 minute, well, it's an hour of mission time with a 20-minute turn back and forth to the FARP, and 300 rounds of 50 cal and 5 or 7 rockets. If I had a guy that's about my size, would be typical.
Okay.
Yeah, but it always varied.
Wow.
Okay. For question 10, obviously I've seen some.
Hold on. Do you want to talk about stingers?
We have stingers.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so stingers we have planned to bring to the game, but you should know they have not been on the aircraft since around 2004. So, and that's because the mission went away. So the Army determined that we will always have air supremacy, which maybe that was a good decision, maybe it's not, I don't know. But the Air Force kind of told us we're going to have air supremacy forever. So So then the Army consequently said, well, we don't need that capability in the aircraft anymore. Kiowa Warriors always weight challenged. So the associated black boxes, the wiring, the coolant bottles, and all that stuff that makes up the Stinger system. I forget what it weighs, but there was an initiative to pull all that stuff out. So when the requirement to execute that mission by the Army went away, we don't need that hardware on the aircraft anymore, so it was taken out. It's a pretty cool capability, and that's why we're putting it back in the game. And to your, I think it'll be, so that's one thing that KW will bring. Well, no, Gaz has air-to-air capability too, doesn't it?
Yeah, it uses Mistral, which is pretty effective as well.
It's pretty much a Stinger.
So that's where Stinger comes in. Yeah. Somebody asked me whether you would ever go out with a loadout of 4 Stingers. I can't, sure, you could. I can't imagine why you would do that unless you built a mission specifically to leverage that capability. But
or you don't have that superiority.
Yeah,
we don't always. Well, that's the thing. I mean, when we're starting to have fixed wing threats or even rotary wing threats, we don't always have air superiority in the missions. And it's kind of balanced also when we have friendly squadrons joining up, flying fixed wings. they're not always stopping everyone and clearing up the skies for us. So those Mistral thing with the Gazelle, that was a little bit of a game changer in a way that we used to be target practice for the fixed wing for a long time, and suddenly with the Mistral on the Gazelle, suddenly we were able to reply and actually be a real threat. But again, as you say, I've seen a few videos of Kiowa shooting Stingers, but it looked like it was just trials. But in DCS, that will be a dedicated Kiowa. Like say we're flying in a flight of 4, and we know there's going to be air threat, and we know we're not going to have the air superiority in that case. You would recommend having at least one Kiowa with Stingers to protect the rest?
Yeah. So if you're putting together like a squadron mission, and you're in that kind of environment, I think it would be super fun to have that air-to-air capability, and you dedicate that one aircraft, to be the counter-air.
We've done that before when we had the Rabbit Stew missions, when we had the Mi-24s that were a QRF. We had one of our guys dressed up in a Mistral, and it was pretty effective actually. He just hid behind a feature and popped right behind them as they flew past.
And so I'll put a plug in for my YouTube channel. I hung a couple videos on there from the old days. I had some tape of me shooting a Stinger, and it's from the cockpit. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that. You guys?
Yeah. So it's the MMS symbology, and you get to hear how the Stinger growl, kind of like it's similar to the Sidewinder growl, but then we talk through. You see the symbology, etc. So if you're interested. It was not a prototype system. It was a fielded system for a number of years, and I am probably I've shot three of them, and it all happened before 2001. So we didn't get to practice it that often because they're expensive, and there's nobody left that's younger than me that ever shot those.
Wow.
So that capability went away, like I said, in 2004, and we would do maybe one practice shoot a year. You'd get like 5 missiles for a unit, and only the chosen few would be able to go out and actually shoot one. But it was cool. It was fun.
Oh, yeah, sounds fun.
Yeah, I'll post a link to that if you're interested.
Oh yeah. We're gonna
Definitely
look at
so.
this. Yeah. All right. Let's move on. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's another one about you may be curious about the digital communications aspect of it. That's another couple hours of talking too, but I got another video on there that shows how we did digital fires back then too. So that if that was a part of DCS, that's something that no other helicopter outside of the Longbow could do with target locating, and you send your calls for fire, etc., over a digital net.
Are you just talking of it? Are you sending that straight to the FTC then? Are you?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That was the big.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that was the big. That was the big idea. Idea in quotes. So it was called ATHS, or Airborne Target Handover System. And sorry to derail the conversation, but going back to that piece where I talked about the Kiowa Warrior worked for the artillery in the early days. So Kiowa Warrior was created for an artillery requirement. Army Aviation didn't know they wanted it. So artillery actually wrote and validated the requirement to have an airborne aerial target designator and spotter. And that's where the MMS came from. That's why it's above the rotor head. And the first OH-58D were not armed. It was just an artillery observing platform. So the software in there was created to link directly to the FDC. Over time, that capability, like the artillery got some new systems, Army Aviation didn't prioritize upgrading their black boxes. It's kind of the legacy of the 58 that we always, everything becomes desynchronized. So our software versions then weren't compatible with the new artillery. Then they went to AFATADS, which is a completely different system. And that capability was kind of lost, but I have used it.
Okay, that's really interesting actually, because we've always used artillery, and that's probably my background as well. Once I got promoted, working with the artillery, and offensive support group has always had a rotary wing element as part of it. So we recognise the use of artillery and those joint fires.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion. Part of the requirements writers always have these kind of Star Wars high-tech solutions in mind that sometimes don't really play out on the battlefield. So there's always friction. Your radios drop fills, you're beyond line of sight, whatever the case may be. And with digital fires, what we found was we ended up always double checking everything with voice anyway, because when you hit the send button, there's no guarantee that the receiving, like the FDC, actually got the message. So there's some checks and balances in there, like you would get an acknowledged message back or etc. But sometimes there was a delay. If you keyed the mic, the message was interrupted, and so it worked if everything was working perfectly. But the friction of the battlefield always meant, we'd press send, you'd get the beep boop beep, and the FDC would call out, okay, we just got your message. And the pilot would say, all right, so, I just sent you a fire message, go ahead and fire via voice anyway. And we're, like Kaz and I are hearing a lot of questions about, are we going to have Link 16? Are we going to have the ability to share targets between aircraft? And to be honest with you, those things don't really exist in real life.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to, they do, but they don't work that elegantly. Link 16, don't get me wrong, is a very mature and works pretty much perfectly. But no Army helicopter has had Link 16 until the last 2 years when the Apache E model got it. So that's, and Link 16 is standard, I'm sure you guys know, across the Air Force and the Navy, and even across some air defense systems. But the Army didn't have it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only data link that we're really using is the K50. It's working well, but between the K50, you can actually send contacts and targets digitally between the helicopters.
Yep. And that's just K50 to K50, right?
Yeah, only K50 to K50.
And it's a proprietary system, and Boeing did the same thing to us with the longbow. They have something called the longbow net, which only talks to other longbows. So
can't talk to your customers.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's move to the other questions. Who's taking the next one?
Okay, number 10. Clay, I've seen the trolls on the low level asking about this one. Yeah. What are the uses of smoke grenades? We assume not to mark targets by flying over. I would say that is the requirement, but I will ask the subject matter expert.
Depends on what you call a target. So if the target is able to shoot back at you, then no, I wouldn't fly over it. But if we are trying to, for instance, we're doing a route reconnaissance for a security patrol that is moving through an area that has questionable terrain, maybe some culverts, some bridges, their maps aren't that good, we would fly out 1,000 meters ahead of them and look for anything that could influence their movement. If we found something, we drop a smoke grenade on it. And, hey, do you see my smoke? Yeah, roger. Okay, well, don't drive towards the purple smoke. And then, so it was just a method of being able to coordinate between us and the ground guy, or low ship, high ship. If we found a cache site or something, the low guy, it's not easy to talk your trail ship on, okay, do you see that palm tree? Okay, on the left side of that palm tree next to that sewer pipe, there's a tarp. He doesn't see that from 1,000 feet. So you drop a smoke grenade on it. All right, you got my smoke? Yeah, okay. 10 feet to the north of that smoke is what I'm talking about. We're talking about very, very small. So when you're flying up at 20,000 feet in an F-16, your perspective is very, very different than when you're flying at 30 feet looking at shovels and wires, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So being able to do that coordination between you, the ground force, and you and your trail ship, and then once you step away from the 50-meter circle and you're looking at a close air support aircraft such as an A-10, if you can use the laser spot tracker, great, but they're visual too. So you drop a smoke on what you want them to look at, and then they say, okay, I got your smoke, and then they slew their sight to it and store it, and then they have it. So that's really what we would use it for.
So basically, you're using primarily for like an IED sweep as well. To sign effectively. Just to
mark something that we want to call attention to.
Yeah,
is what it boils down to.
Okay.
And if you're talking about I guess this is a question from somebody, but you would not use it to mark targets by flying over it. Well, if that target's shooting back at you, you already know where it is. So, yeah.
I think that was a little bit cynical in the question. Like, obviously, you're not going to fire over your target if he shoots back at you. So, I guess I've never thought about using that beside just pointing a location or just something like this. I would say, hey, why would you drop a grenade over something that can shoot back? So obviously, you're not going to do that. But I got your point. It's very good. Yeah, okay, I got it. It makes sense totally. I feel briefings maybe.
Yeah. Let's see. Question 11. Okay. What's the minimum information required in a briefing for a recon task? That's a class that our students receive over a 1 week period.
Okay.
But simply put, you need to know who you're working for, their intent. So is it a terrain-focused reconnaissance? Is it an enemy-focused reconnaissance? What is it that they are trying to accomplish? So you as the air mission commander need to do the mission analysis to figure out what product you need to provide to the person you're working for. So when you look at recon tasks in the coin fight, again, we fly for the 8-hour block and we just kind of look around for things that look out of place or wait to be called on a 911 call to assist. When you're talking about large-scale combat operations and the doctrinal recon tasks, you get into extremely complex planning that involves staffs. So a zone reconnaissance, and Casmo talks about this in his a couple of his videos, a zone reconnaissance could be enemy-focused or terrain-focused. Terrain-focused would take, that's probably a 24-hour task where you have to cycle several sorties to, it's very deliberate. We're noting the weight-bearing capability of any water crossings. We're noting slopes. Are there any curvatures in the roads that would prevent a semi-truck or a heavy equipment mobile trailer from making that turn? Those are the kinds of, you can do that with map reconnaissance and satellite imagery as well, but we would do it like, okay, we went to the NAI, named area of interest number 2, and what we found there corroborates what your satellite imagery shows, but that satellite imagery is 6 months old, so this is what's there now. For instance, you're recommending an LZ or a PZ for an assault lift, whereas in the satellite imagery, it may look like a perfectly suitable landing area. When you get there, you notice that there's 6-foot tall pine trees all through there that would poke holes in the bottom of your helicopters. You don't know that until you go look at it. So the bottom line is, you got to know who you're working for, what the focus of the task is, and then you break it down into your execution tasks of, okay, we're going to take off out of here, we're going to do our route up to the objective area, and then we're going to look at NAIs 1 through 10. But what you have to know is who you're working for, who is going to be using the information, and then you tailor your reconnaissance focus on that. And there, like I said, there's a lot more specifics, but the second part of your question there is how long would a briefing take? So focus your question for me. Are you talking about a 2-ship coin mission or a deliberate planning mission?
I think that the whole question is coming from what we're doing at Black Shark Dance is when we're preparing the missions and we giving the briefings to the pilots who registered for the mission. Depending on the mission designer, the briefing can be really, really long, and so we always have people say, "Oh, I've been sitting listening to the briefing for 1 hour and a half, so that's too long. I just want to fly," and we like to get an idea. I'm sure it's much longer than that in real life, but between cutting short a briefing, is it reasonable? I would say, can you actually provide enough information to your pilots in half an hour to go jump into the helicopter and fly a mission? I guess that's, as you say, it depends really on the mission.
It does. And 2 hours is not a long time for a deliberate mission. Like you said, for playing a game, it would drive me nuts too. And I want to make a distinction between playing a game. I don't want to downplay that aspect of it. I enjoy seeing some of the things I did in DCS as well. But if you have to, so if your mission is so complex that you guys talked about, sometimes we do 10-ship missions and we have a communication coordination card. Maybe you saw from Casmo's air assault vid that we did at Low, and Phil, you were there. You see how quickly things become disconnected just with one commo hiccup. And that's where the planning aspect comes in. It's like the more detailed you get, the more you're able to react to unforeseen circumstances. You have backup plans and you have contingencies, and okay, if we lose somebody on Fox Mike, then our backup is VHF, those kinds of things. For a 2-ship counterinsurgency reconnaissance mission that you do over long periods of time, like you do that same mission every day, again, you're just a cop circulating around your patrol area. We call that, so we do a team brief where the AMC would take about 15 to 20 minutes once everybody is familiar with the mission area. You do a quick team brief and just cover call signs, what your objectives are that day. Everything else is kind of the same every day. And then you go do a crew brief between just you and your co-pilot, and you talk about the safety aspects, etc. What you're asking about is how long would a typical team brief take? And if it's something that nobody has done before, at least an hour, because you got to cover every aspect that everybody has to be familiar with.
Okay, that's not too bad then. I thought it would be longer than that.
Longer?
Yeah, I thought it would be longer. I mean, an hour sounds about what.
Well, that's for a team of 2.
Yeah. Now, okay.
When you have to synchronize, let's say you're doing a 4 or 8-ship deliberate attack mission, and you have assets such as CAS, artillery. There may be timing aspects like, okay, we can't cross phase line red until the suppression of enemy air defenses is accomplished, and the Air Force is doing that. Well, how do we know the Air Force did it? You got a lot of complex moving pieces that the crews have to be familiar with. So the planning portion of it, it's called a 72-hour planning cycle. So from receipt of the mission to planning a deliberate mission will take 72 hours of nonstop staff work.
Okay.
Depending on the complexity. And then you brief the mission, and if you're talking about more than just 2 ships that have that are doing the same thing every day in the same mission area, you get into people start to lose interest after 2 hours, so you have to, there's human aspects too, but it could easily take that long. You have and Lateo, you probably have seen this, there's a 5-paragraph op order. What's the enemy? What's the weather? What are the key tasks we have to accomplish? And then the S2 comes in and briefs the intelligence picture. Then the S3 comes in and he briefs the scheme of maneuver. And then you gotta, okay, when's engine crank? When's comm check? When's lineup? When's takeoff? It could be hundreds of different things you're briefing.
Yeah, we try and... I just want to put a warning order in first of all, so at least people know what's going on, what the intent is, situation, probable task, OME mission, timings, etc., etc. And then with that, then we put the briefing up, and then we try and invite other people to brief on certain elements. So that we'll get the mission editor. He all of a sudden becomes the S2. So he covers, the enemy, situation enemy forces. And then what I try and do is a bit of a Q&A. To make sure people have actually read the briefing, because some guys just want to rock up and fly, and obviously that's when it sort of goes a bit horribly wrong. So we're trying to find a bit of a happy medium of giving them enough information, but it's not, they don't just come here to listen to a briefing, because it's not real life, is it? It's a game, end of the day.
Yeah, and right, people need to have fun, but you also don't, like you said, I wouldn't want, if I spent time putting something together and somebody just wants to roll in and jump into a hot cockpit and he's gonna ruin your experience, basically, always asking questions. Or so I think the key aspects you have to cover is like, okay, what time are we meeting on the radios, what time are we doing a comm check, and what time if you're separated into teams or something, the minimum aspects are those sequencing and timing aspects of the mission.
We did one recently where we used quite a number of code words as well, and that went down pretty well, because everybody then knew, okay, so that code word tone deaf, right? Okay, so I now know that the radar's down, and right, I know that short circuit. So that was really quite useful. So everyone was all informed, there, listening on the common, so we're getting a bit of a picture of what was actually happening, even though you were disengaged somewhere else in the FIBA, actually, delivering your mission requirements.
Yeah, the UH, the cargo and the lift guys love their we call them X-checks, execution checklists. Yeah, all pro words.
That's where we get those X-checks from actually a guy flying with us. He's flying Black Hawks, and he showed us the way a little bit of doing briefings, and that's where the X-checks are coming from.
Yeah, those drive me nuts. I mean, they have a pro word for engine start. Well, okay, why not just say engine start? If it's something on a net that, like you said, if there's a pro word that says the priority target has been taken out, or the radar picture is, that's good for a pro word. But if you need like an X check for coming on the net and saying, whiskey, and then you got to refer to your list and say, oh, that means start my engine. It's like, well, shit. I mean, we haven't even left the airfield. Let's just say start, it's engine crank time or whatever. So they are much more tied to their X checks than the recon and the attack communities are.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's cultural.
Refill, we haven't heard about you. You want to go ahead for the next question?
Yeah, I'm just sitting here listening,
Yeah.
I have a question on coordinates. So you guys all talked about getting coordinates for artillery. In the Gazelle, you get a 5-place coordinate. But you really need a 6th place. And if you're going to do a precision strike, what you want to call a fast mover, and to do JDAM, you need minutes, degrees, minutes, seconds, and hundredths of a second. So that bearing in mind, what coordinates do you get when you laser a target, or you get a coordinate target with the Kiowa? Is it the 6 figures, or is it 7 figures, or is it 8? I mean, how does that work?
Okay, let me clarify. When you say 6 or 7 or 8 figures, in what format? What do you mean?
For example, if I were to call in a JDAM strike, it would be east 1, 2, 3, 4, then another set of numbers, which would be a 0.67. If I'm just calling a map coordinates, it's east 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay.
South 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's degrees, minutes, and seconds. Degrees, minutes, tenths of seconds, or degrees, minutes, and hundredths of a second.
Okay, and hundredths of a second then would be the 6-digit. Like in the easting, you're talking 6 digits of precision. Degrees, minutes, seconds, tenths of seconds, and hundredths of seconds.
Correct.
And that would be 5, or?
No, so you would put in, the first 2 figures are your degrees. So if I put in east 1, 2, 3, 4, so that 1, 2 is the degrees, 3, 4 are the minutes, 5, 6 are the seconds, but then you would extrapolate that seconds into another double set of numbers for a JDAM strike. which is precision strike.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify so that I'm speaking in the same terminology. So first of all, the Army does not speak lat long. All aircraft will use MGRS, which is based on the Universal Transverse Mercator system. Same grid system, just MGRS uses, you're familiar, right? Uses the alphanumeric designator versus
And
So
you have it in DCS
Army,
anyway.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, you also have the choice to use MGRS also in DCS.
Yeah. So Army does not talk lat long. And if you delve into the artillery side, they're really talking mils, but they would also talk in grid. So there's really nothing that's plotted in Army operations using lat long. I think some of the Air Force systems may still use lat long, but mostly they've migrated over to MGRS because, quite honestly, they work for us in the casserole. And the Navy uses lat long because there's no grid reference system over the open water. So that's why they typically, culturally or habitually, have used lat long. But if they're working in a casserole, I'm sure that they use MGRS too, because that's what all the ground forces use. And then as far as precision goes, so there's no targeting platforms. In other words, the laser rangefinder designator in the KW or the MTADs in the Apache, they generate 8-digit MGRS grids, which is accurate to the 10 meter accuracy. So when I say 8-digit, that's 4 for the easting and 4 for the northing. Okay, so if you had a 2-digit grid, that'd be a 10,000 meter square. Then a 4-digit grid would be 1,000 meter square or a kilometer. The 6-digit grid would be within 100 meters. 8-digit grid is within 10 meters. And if you get down to the 10-digit grid, that's 1 meter accuracy. And that would be what we call a mensurated grid, and that's what you do for targeting for precision weapons. The helicopter can't generate that grid because its nav system is only accurate to the 8-digit grid or the 10 meter accuracy. So if you were passing, so when the Air Force does targeting analysis, where they're dropping JDAMs is probably, they may have some systems within their aircraft that can generate a 10-digit grid. But 10-digit grids, I think, typically would be used for a precision strike for something that's pre-planned, because the accuracy of the systems on the aircraft most likely can't generate a 10-digit grid. There are some systems that can, but typically, like your fighters and whatnot, would generate an 8-digit grid that's accurate down to 10 meters. That's how the MGRS system works.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Just the reason I'd asked, in the Gazelle, you can go take your five-digit coordinates at one point, move to another point, get another set of 5 digits, and then through a lot of math, you can get an exact within a 10-foot square or a 1 meter square for a JDAM strike. And I didn't know whether the Kiowa could do that on its own. So it's still going to be the same kind of a thing. It's just going to be a 2, 4, 6-digit figure, which is fine.
Correct. So when you press lays and target or target located target with the MMS, it's going to give you an 8-digit grid, which is plus or minus 10 meters.
Wow.
Which is good enough for a fire for effect mission if you were to pass that to artillery. And it's good enough for navigation, certainly.
Yeah,
so
it's one place better than we're using right now, so in the Gazelle, so that's great.
Okay. Yeah, if you so when I'm sitting in the left seat, let's say, and I'm calling an artillery mission, or I'm doing terrain association off a paper map in my lap, I'd probably generate a 6-digit grid, which is plus or minus 100 meters, or gets you within a 100-meter square. And if you were to send a call for fire request to artillery with a 6-digit grid, you would get an adjust fire mission. So they'd give you the 1 or 2 rounds, and you do your adjustment off that, and then send that information back to them, and then they would fire for effect. With the accuracy of the systems in the current helicopters, technically you could call for a fire for effect mission on that first call, because you're giving them an 8-digit grid.
All right. Okay. Thanks. I don't know where we are right now. I think for who is asking what, but I'm going to take the next question, I guess. Do we have to use? I mean, are you guys using actually those 9 lines and 5 lines calls? Or what you're calling, is that different from call for fires?
Call for fire consists of 5 lines, but when you talk about 9 lines and 5 lines, so there's 2 kinds of 9 lines. There's a medical 9 line and a CAS 9 line.
Yeah.
And I would not have them memorized. I would definitely refer to a checklist, because there's, I would pencil in the information on the 9 lines and then read it to the guy. And a 5 line is an expedient 9 line. So for some CAS, when you have a JTAC that's doing, I forget now, I think it's Type 3 control is the least restrictive. I'd have to look at it's been a while. Some CAS can receive a 5 line and be okay with that. That does not include certain aspects of the CAS 9 line, such as the initial point, or the egress direction, etc. A JTAC might have a CAS 9 line memorized, but I think he would probably write this stuff down on a kneeboard and then make the radio call. So to answer your question there, no, it's not anything I would ever memorize. You'd be familiar with it and know what you're supposed to say, but I have a 9 line reference on my kneeboard, and either with a grease pencil or an erasable, pen of some sort, I would write in that information before keying the mic.
All right. Okay. So
but it is something we have to be familiar with and use, absolutely. But it's not something I would commit to memory.
The question is more to do with preparation for once the module drops. And the question is, what chapters of the -10 op manual would you recommend that we need to read carefully before the module comes out? Any other documents you recommend?
Okay. That's an interesting one. I struggled with that one a little bit, because the -10 is the operator's manual, which is the cover-to-cover sort of description of the helicopter and what the operator is supposed to know.
Yeah, I've got it in front of me now. 633 pages of it.
Yeah. It's pretty big.
So chapter 2 is like the systems, power plant, hydraulics, rotor system, etc. It's good information. Does it affect how you employ the helicopter? No. Chapter 3 is avionics. So when you get to your control mappings on your cyclic and your collective, etc., I don't know that chapter 3 tells you how the radios work and how to configure the nav system, etc. We're certainly going to be doing some tutorials on setting those, using those things once the module is released in DCS. I plan to go through and do a guide on how to use the nav system, the comm system, setting up the weapon systems, etc. So chapter 4 is probably the one you want to look at, which is the weapon systems and some of the tactical communication digital radios. But for the most part, it's the 50 cal rocket, Hellfire. Stinger's gone, so we will have to find, that's not in the -10 anymore, so we'll have to find some other method of training that. And then chapter 5 is limitations, which is just stuff we have to memorize. So unless you're curious on what the green, amber, and red bands on the instruments mean, then it doesn't mean anything. Chapter 6 is weight and balance. Chapter 7 is performance. So that's where we would go into, and okay, we're at 2,000 feet mean sea level and the temperature is 35 degrees. This is what we can expect our engine. This prior mission planning stuff. Chapter 8 is what you want. So that's your normal procedures. That takes you through a startup switchology. But it's really just checklists. And then chapter 9 is emergency procedures. So if we go to the fidelity, and I don't know how much fidelity we're going to get into modeling some of the failures, when it's stuff like, okay, you have an AC generator fail, okay, what are your immediate action steps? AC generator off to reset them back on. If you want to take the time to learn those kinds of things, then chapter 9 is where you want to look. But I would say chapter 4 and chapter 8.
Chapter 4 and chapter 8, okay. And 9 if you really want to get into the detail. Okay.
9 is emergency procedures.
Okay.
Yeah, chapter 4 is probably 150, 200 pages of just descriptions. So, it's just talking about how the systems work. I know that there's a quite outdated version of the Dash 10 that's freely available on the web. I believe it's a 1999 version. I don't know that there's anything more recent than that. So some of the information, so Stinger is still in the 1999 version, but it is not in the more current versions. But the current versions are not publicly available yet.
No, 1999, you're correct. Yeah, 30th of April.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of that information is quite outdated. The major stuff doesn't change, but the systems, that's pre-JVMF, pre-moving map, all those kinds of things aren't going to be in there.
All right.
Okay,
we're coming to the last question, so it's not too bad. So I'm going to take this one. It's just about the ATM. So we had to work at Black Chardent with the 3 ATMs we can come up with, which is the 64. The 60 and the 58, and we have to work through removing the tasks that are not applicable to DCS, so that cannot be applicable to DCS. At some point, we came up with some kind of hybrid solution, and we tried to say, okay, this is overall the task 1000s and 2000s you need to complete to get to your RL2 and RL1. But there's some specificities to the different platform, at least to the different roles, that is OH, AH, and UH. Can you think about tasks in the ATM that are really super specific to the 58 or super specific to the OH in general that you'll never find in the AH or, the 64 or the 60 ATM?
Yep. In fact, let me pull mine up right now. I don't remember the task number, so that's why I'm pulling it up. But one would be perform aerial observation. A second one would be perform masking unmasking.
Oh. You don't do that in AH?
I don't know that it's a task in the AH. I'd have to look in the AH ATM.
Okay.
Yeah. So specific to the weapon systems, you would want to look at employ the Hellfire, employ the 50 cal, and employ rockets. Those are each separate tasks. Things like terrain flight takeoff and traffic pattern flight and plan a VFR flight, etc. Those are common to all the other ones as well. So you were asking about specific stuff. I'll take a look, and I was supposed to do this before we talked so that I would have them in my hand.
No worry.
Oh, here it is. I got it. Okay. Let me go through real quick. Pre-flight. Are you talking about just technical tasks, or are you interested in
there's
just simulating, taxiing around the aircraft or the airfield and, going through run-up procedures and stuff as well?
Well, not really the run-up. We split the trainings we're providing to the new guys into two group of tasks. It kind of vaguely relates to the real thing, but the task 1000s basically relates to kind of flying your helicopter. So knowing the systems on board and not crashing every time you're doing something a little bit funny, slope landings and all this kind of thing. And then the task 2000 really relates to the combat aspect, using the helicopter in a combat environment, so more for combat mission here. So I don't know if it's kind of sticks with obviously Hellfires. Yes, obviously Hellfires will be one task that does not apply to anyone else, because the 58 will be the only one in DCS firing Hellfires. But maybe in the task 1000, so again, that's the ones that are most discussed. And I use this example of pinnacle landing, like the H guy came back to me and say, why do we do pinnacle landings? That's not something the H will do. So we remove that.
Okay.
So I'm probably around the task 1000, maybe. I assume the systems, I understand the systems as weapons. That would be more the task 2000. So it's very specific. It's easy to find, but maybe the task 1000 is less obvious for us. So flying the aircraft.
Gotcha. I'm just looking through like task 1300, perform MMS operations. We were required. That doesn't tell you how to do it in the ATM, so that will be in the guide that we create on like which buttons to push, etc. Okay, so let's ANBIS transmit tactical reports. So that's your spot reporting. So if you kind of want to replicate, and Casmo and I are planning to do a couple of videos where we try to follow proper radio procedure and do some reporting once we get the systems in the aircraft working properly, where I can do a target locate and get a proper grid, and then I will via voice transmit reports. But these are the doctrinal formats we would use for voice communication. So I believe this is in the AH-ATM as well, but that's a good one to know. If your guys are interested in kind of talking the talk the right way, I guess.
All right.
Let's see, terrain flight, weapons initialization, perform firing techniques. That's a good one to read, particularly. So on page 4-93, paragraph 2, if you watch Casmo's vid about rocket firing, you heard he mention, I'm verifying my 4 T's, target, torque, trim, target. But he didn't really talk about like what does that mean a lot. So have them read over that, which is really applicable to how to shoot rockets correctly. And I'm going to do a guide on that as well. In fact, I was planning on doing it today. But that is task 1422, perform firing techniques. Right. And then read the description, and that's very helpful in understanding how to employ the weapon systems, diving fire versus running fire, kind of the pluses and minuses to it, what you should be looking at as far as your target torques, etc., recovery techniques. That's a good one.
We use enough time from you, Barundus, so that was really cool and really nice of you to share your experience. Phil, you had anything else to go through, or?
No, just Barundus, again, thank you for coming along, and really look forward to seeing some more of your videos and working with you guys over there at Low Level Hell too as well. So thank you again.
Yeah, right on. It's been a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to the continued engagement. I really do enjoy the insightful and enthusiastic questions. So happy to. It tickles my instructor bone, so to speak. So happy to pass along anything I know. I look forward to more of this in the future as well.
Thanks so much, Barundus. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the information, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Yep, I appreciate it. See you guys. Talk to you soon as well.
Bye-bye.